scenario coming up. It's going to be the 24th of this month, the 22nd of next month. 2 evolutions for each of those days. All right? This is going to be a little bit different format than we did in the past. So in the past, where were we at? Where were we located?
Mount Brighton.
Right? Yeah, Mount Brighton, and more specifically in the buildings of Mount Brighton. All right, so we're working in a more confined environment, enclosed in a building that offers some protection for us. All right, this is going to be a little bit different. It's going to add a whole nother element to it. This is going to be an open air venue, which means that there's going to be a lot more unknowns, and us as an organization. Now, our job's not really going to change. We're still going to be working as part of that rescue task force. Our goal is still going to be the same, but there's going to be some variables in there that we have less control over. All right, so we're going to be relying heavily on law enforcement. They're going to be going in with their contact team to basically create and designate warm zones for us to operate in, at which time we will tag in with law enforcement, become part of a rescue task force, and go in and do what we do as far as life-saving goes. So that's what's coming up. There'll be sign-up sheets within the next week of basically putting together companies to go and participate in those large-scale scenarios. Tonight, we're very fortunate to have somebody who actually experienced a mass casualty event in their home area that are coming to talk to us a little bit about it. So, well, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself. So he's currently captain working out of Grand Traverse Metro and going through staff and command with Captain Murray. So let you do a quick introduction.
Right, thanks,
and then, yeah, you bet.
And good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here tonight. So some of you guys might remember up in Traverse City, we had a Walmart incident where somebody went in and stabbed 11 people. My name is Spencer Scanlon. I'm with the Grand Traverse Metro Fire Department. I'm a captain. Grand Traverse Metro surrounds the outskirts of Traverse City, the 110 square miles. So this supermarket, Walmart, was actually just down the road from our Station 11 that was there. So on this incident, I'm just going to kind of walk through from the beginning. Stop me, ask questions for sure. I'm going to give you some of the good and some of the bad, and definitely some takeaways from us for this incident. So when we got this dispatch, we originally got dispatched to, I believe, a male patient with a laceration in Walmart. That was just a medical call for us. So that was a one-station response with an ambulance. So that crew got together. On their way going, the dispatcher's going, okay, wait, something's not right. The board is lighting up with calls coming from Walmart. So the dispatcher that was actually working this event actually went to the active assailant conference with us just prior to this event. So they were kind of tuning in and what they needed to ask. So he soon realized, okay, reports of 3 and 4 different people were injured. So with a man running around with a knife. So he quickly went over the radio, hey, possible active assailant, unknown amount of patients, staged for law enforcement. So that engine, as they're going there, kind of staging, getting ready, right before they were about to stage, they had semi-reports that the active assailant was contained outside from a law enforcement officer. While en route, that dispatcher was trying to find, okay, what is the active assailant wearing? Is there multiple attackers, if you will, to try to get a good intel for law enforcement? So law enforcement quickly updates us that they believe they have the suspect detained. So that engine that first gets there, they travel down this driveway and they take the first road in to the supermarket. They immediately pull the parking brake out here. They get out, and one patient, they were immediately met with by the front door. So we talk about active assailants and active shooters, at least for us in Grand Traverse Metro, was trying to assemble an RTF. Is there a need to determine a warm or a hot zone? Is there a need to determine if we're staging before we make entry? Real quick with that law enforcement, just face to face, they had a pretty good understanding that this was just one assailant in the parking lot, so they could start to proceed further. While they're trying to get to Walmart, our on-duty captain is obviously dispatched. Our second station close to this tags along along with myself. But during that, radio channels was pretty much inoperable. What I mean by that was just everybody trying to check en route and all the updates from dispatch. You couldn't really get a word in edgewise. So immediately when that active assailant word is mentioned by dispatch, law enforcement requested an MCI box, which for us is 5 ambulances and 2 engines. Unfortunately, going to this call, the fire department and law enforcement weren't on the same channels. As they got there on scene and they found that patient, law enforcement was obviously a couple minutes ahead of us. They update now with possible 5 patients. So law enforcement again requests a second alarm MCI box. So that's 5 more ambulances on top of that first alarm. So the incident commander, if you will, that on-duty captain, they're hearing these 10 ambulances kind of check en route before they even get on scene because law enforcement is requesting them, and they do have a need for them. So that first engine that arrives on scene, they immediately get met by a patient outside. Law enforcement takes their hand off the back of that patient and they start splurting blood. That crew of 3 is now immediately tied up from that one patient. So they don't have a good, accurate count yet of even what's inside of the building. That second engine, myself and that Metro captain gets on scene. The second engine goes up and around and down. That captain parks right here and I parked right here. And really to that, bad on us. That first engine kind of blocked right here. That second engine kind of blocked up there, and that really blocked our egress. So kind of jumping forward just a little bit, you would think a parking lot that is made to push people in and out would be really easy to get in and out of. Terrible. Because, fire department immediately blocked these 2 routes. Law enforcement immediately blocked every aisle. And one of the hiccups really for us was once the ambulances got on scene and we found a way to snake them in, law enforcement behind us, they need to make a perimeter. So they start taping it off. So they tape off this entire route, but we still had ambulances behind that caution tape and nowhere for them to get out.
Do your ambulances go in the warm zone?
They will if they are requested to. At this time, they had a good gut feeling that this was entire cold with the one active assailant. Everybody that went into this building was escorted from law enforcement just in case there was opportunity for that second assailant. The big thing for us though, kind of debriefing this, was the fire department carries ballistic vests and helmets to be part of rescue task force. Our plan was the ambulances would remain outside and we would kind of bring the victims to them, right? We would establish, maybe a casualty collection point right here, assign a triage officer. In a perfect world, you'd have a strip of ambulances and I would just load that cot and they would go. Somewhere along the lines, and now I'll be blunt, we had low ambulance participation at our rescue task force
That's my
drills.
next question, how many showed up?
Not many. So, somewhere in between, the ambulances bought vests, and now they're on the understanding that they're gonna go in and treat the people. Crazy, right? Bad news for us if this would have happened like that. If I would drag somebody out and I find this empty ambulance with not a crew in it, that'd be a bad day. So just kind of being on the same page with the ambulance. That first ambulance that gets there, they do go inside, and then that paramedic kind of becomes a makeshift triage officer at the entrance. But the problem is with these ambulances and crews, every time they get a couple feet inside the store, they keep getting stopped by patients, right? All 11 of them were really concentrated down this entryway. So in a Walmart, this was a produce section, and this was a pharmacy. This was kind of like their DoorDash shop and go area. So all the patients were really, luckily for us, in a straight line, but it took us a while, I will say, to make that primary search to get a good, accurate count. luckily for us, and like I said, I talked about the downfalls of the radio communication. So that captain gets there and he's trying to link up with law enforcement because we really want that unified command earlier. He goes up, he finds a patrol deputy, he says, who's in charge? He says, the road sergeant. Captain goes, okay, where's the sergeant? Well, he went inside to go help people with the gun, right?
Somewhere in the story.
Yeah, so the captain asked that deputy, well, he's not in charge anymore. If he's inside trying to find someone, so who's next up now to link with me? I don't know, it's the sergeant, but he's inside, right, doing work. So that really didn't work out from our perspective. Really, in a perfect world, we teach command from us, kind of be operated out of the vehicle. If that captain wouldn't have been there to have a face-to-face communication of everybody coming and going, you wouldn't have been able to get on the radio to try to make that good situational awareness. You know, he did the best he could. Kind of at the end of the day, he wrote down, we transported 9 people. We really did 11. So he had a lot going on for that. We make that, like I said, an initial push into the store once we had enough resources there to identify the need for that primary and secondary search, right? Hospital wants to know how many people they have. We need to know, do we even have enough ambulances coming or enough resources to deal? It first came out as 1 patient, got upgraded to 3, and possibly maybe 5 to 6, and we ended up at 11.
You could have people wounded, hiding.
Absolutely, and that's what, you know.
It's a big store to clear.
I was thinking when I got there and I met with them, like, hey, do we even know how many people we got? Because like you said, you can imagine all these people, they took off running. So we get inside, I link up with state police, and we had to do a quick, hasty primary of the search of the store. Caveat being, there's entrances, or I'm sorry, exits that go outside, and then their big delivery trailers are outside. Did someone run outside and lock themselves in a trailer? Did they go and lock themselves in a fitting room? Did they lock themselves in a bathroom? So the amount of people and effort that took, it took us a few minutes to make sure of that. We went in and immediately wanted to do the primary, and the first thing we found was the pharmacy consult door was locked. Fitness rooms are locked. Walmart has a ton of manager rooms that are locked. Should have probably hit the knocks quickly or got good keys from a manager or somebody before we even made entry to do that, because there's a lot of places in a grocery store that are locked. Absolutely. Luckily, we were able to meet him near the front of the store and eventually get those keys. But yeah, clearing these primary and secondary took a second. So we start, you know, bringing cots inside, because as soon as anybody gets there, right, they want to go inside and help. I think having, you know, somebody in charge of staging would have been really helpful. Trying to help, you know, are we establishing a casualty collection point, or are we at a point where it's easier for you just to bring your cot in and we'll load them up there? Traverse City, you know, believe it or not, we have a huge shortage of ambulances. The 10 additional ambulances probably would have took an hour to get there. So we had to start stacking 2 to 3 people a rig. What that meant for the crews was they wanted a driver or assistance in the back. So now, trying to do a primary and secondary search, we're losing firefighters and people, because each ambulance crew now needs 1 or 2 of us to go to the hospital to transport those 3 people. You know, start talking active assailant. You know, we want to stop the killing, which law enforcement did a phenomenal job getting there quickly. Luckily, that assailant was already outside. But us, we want to stop the killing, and it's just trying to figure out, is this safe to go into or not, and really linking up with law enforcement. If that person was still inside, we need to now establish a rescue task force to go inside, and what is considered warm, what is considered hot, and what are you guys comfortable with. Big kudos from us to MSP. Their assortment of MCI, triage, tourniquets was huge. Big thing for us going in, make sure you have enough tourniquets. You know, a lot of things that we were seeing, that one tourniquet wasn't enough. So you're having to double or triple a tourniquet on someone's arm or leg, just because you weren't able to get that arterial bleed to stop with one tourniquet. Keys to the facility, like you said, would have been huge in hindsight. We ended up kicking out the glass pharmacy door because we ended up getting a key, but law enforcement broke the key off the door. So unfortunately, we did have to kick that out. It's laminated, doesn't really break well. The window punch. I'm just trying to get somebody inside that doesn't keep getting stopped by patients, to just have good situational awareness of what am I dealing with. Is this, like I said, 5 patients, or is this 50? Get a good accurate count, because if we need resources, obviously I need to call them. Or the rest of my county still needs coverage. Taking 10 ambulances out of my county, I just depleted EMS for a ton of people. Getting that good situational awareness, if I can start cutting them loose and getting them back into service. Like I said, ingress and egress, looking back at a building like this, probably could have did a better job of maybe pre-planning of where we should go. That is probably easy for us, for the fire department, but now you start adding law enforcement, you start adding ambulances, you start adding additional resources, right, that gets hard. So even maybe just someone out in the lot pointing where to go or something, because they're gonna try to get as close to the building as they can, but when this aisle's all blocked up, they're gonna go here, and when this gets full, they're gonna go here, and then obviously the worst it's gonna get. I think the caution tape around the whole thing, I get the perimeter, that was hard. Right now we need to go with someone to lift up the tape or cut the tape, God forbid, and then get in and out that way. Face-to-face command presence was huge, at least, to have a good understanding of that situational awareness. They ended up patching one of our fire grounds into law enforcement, so that did help a little bit of what they were seeing inside, especially when they linked up to us, so we didn't have to repeat traffic, if you will. A perfect world, like I said, they would have met with that road sergeant outside. I totally get why he went inside to try to help. But just some things, forefront to keep in mind of some things we could have did better for the future. Any questions on that? For us, we just implemented some ASHER backpacks, which are really stop the bleed kits that are meant for 10 or 15 people, and I think that was huge. Instead of, bringing in we call it our adult jump kit, that might only have 1 or 2 tourniquets, just something that we can treat a lot of people with. One thing that was nice for those are kind of supply caches, so we can throw a couple of those at the front door, or maybe at the casualty collection point, that, hey, I'm here, I'm dropping a patient off, but I'm gonna go grab 5 tourniquets with me and walk back. We taught and treat and say tourniquets a lot, and definitely tourniquets are very useful. A lot of junctional injuries, right? Stabbings were mostly done in the back and front. Can't put a tourniquet on a chest, right? So that's a lot of direct pressure. And if I don't have good bandaging to do direct pressure, well, now I'm kind of dedicated holding my hand on their chest until someone relieves me. We didn't do a lot of wound packing, but really direct pressure to the chest. For the injuries that we did see on the limbs though, multiple tourniquets, high and tight, made it really easy for our trauma department to kind of figure out what was going on. And then, our hospital, they got bogged down quick. They only have 2 trauma rooms. So those people that had the high and tight tourniquets, they had to sit for a little bit as those people that needed the chest tubes and more invasive care got treated.
Do you practice with law enforcement?
We do. We have a really good practice with the sheriff's department. Unfortunately, we don't practice a lot with MSPs. And the MSP had a huge presence at this.
Changes things dramatically.
100%, because they, for lack of a better word, kind of go to their own, I want to say to their own beat of their drum, but they're going to go in and try to help the situation.
Yes, sir.
Spencer, I know we talked, separately, but, mentioned about sending an engine company to the hospital.
Absolutely.
Do you wanna kind of touch on that?
Yeah, a big, takeaway from us having that one hospital that got loaded down. We had the fire resources, especially backfilled and everything. What if we would have sent a crew of 4 people to the hospital just to kind of help with that ambulance bay, getting people to and from the ambulance, because like I said, we got 3 people per ambulance, right? All 3 people need to get inside, so sending some help with that. The hospital converted a couple of their ER rooms into trauma rooms, so helping that charge nurse take equipment out of those rooms, even running down with some staff and grabbing all the chest tubes that you can, or help shuffling whole blood. I think there's a lot that could be done with helping the hospital with limited resources that they have, for some fire department resources. And a lot of people, well, what's the fire department gonna do in a hospital trauma room setting? But just the people it takes to move equipment and help that ambulance bay kind of flow smoothly, I think would have went a long way with them.
So that's a really great point as far as the hospital goes. So, and going through this process and the after actions that I'm sure that you guys have had on this, if this were to happen again tomorrow, what are some of the changes that you would do, and some of the recommendations if that were to happen in our community that we could do differently to kind of increase the efficiency of this entire process?
Yeah, the big thing for us, that's kind of just go from the start to the end, was maybe, putting this on a separate channel. Because unfortunately, our fire ground units check en route and on scene on. So as you're trying to run a scene like this, you're getting stepped over by someone that's checking en route or on scene. So go into a separate channel. Law enforcement requesting 10 ambulances without fire command knowing about it was something that we talked a lot about, and just trying to go through those channels of who's requesting what resource. Ingress and egress, like I said, the assignment of maybe a staging officer or just somebody to help out with what the flow of traffic is going to be. Even if you are putting a squad or just somebody up at the entrance to make it so they can only flow one way in and one way out, would be huge with us. And like I said, you're kind of working with that private ambulance on what roles they're responsible for in an active assailant, what roles the fire department is going to play when it comes to like rescue task force, and who's going inside to the warm zone, and bringing people out, and vice versa, and things like that.
All right, it seems to me from a fire side, as we're working part of that rescue task force, initially, we're not gonna be making entry into that building, correct? That's law enforcement. So until they have that established and we have a warm zone established, those are all things that we can be doing prior to. Take control of that parking lot, helping to manage the inflow and the access of resources that are coming in. Ambulance determination, absolutely. Figuring out that communications plan, what we're doing, setting up a triage area in a safe location so that when EMS gets there, it'll be set up and ready to go. So there's no need for us just to stand by and do nothing. We can help set that scene up for success if it happens in our community.
Yeah, even just getting equipment out and ready. I mean, unfortunately, our guys, they're bringing everything from a C-collar bag to an adult, and they're grabbing any medical equipment that they could see and bringing inside. Just having the designated equipment of what you want, calling the hospital, giving them a heads up of what you have going on. Especially for us, it's critical. With the one hospital, they need to bring people in. So the sooner that we can let them know, the better. And like you said, Chief, just going over ingress and egress, it's coming, and just starting off real quick of how it's going to look, I think would go a long way.
Nice. And I like the idea you mentioned, having a staging officer there at the entry point when a warm zone's established. So for us, when we're establishing and putting together a casualty collection point that may be still inside of that warm zone area, I think it's a great idea. We've got the resources available to have a officer that's set up in there. Because you think about it, when we're transporting our patients from one location to another, we've done some life-saving interventions prior to that. Transporting in there, can that tourniquet shift? Could that chest seal come loose again? Or the junction site injury where you packed it, could it come loose? So having somebody there to actually do a secondary check once that victim's dropped off, and help coordinate the transport of that patient.
Somebody needs to give those incoming paramedics a report on what he did.
Yeah. And the status of that patient could change. So you may have labeled them a yellow when you dropped it off or a green when you dropped it off, and then they decompensate from injuries that we don't know exist. All right, we got to have a staging officer there to recognize that and change that priority to get them transported out sooner.
Yeah, even a couple things from us. We had people in the parking lot who were just kind of bystanders that were fainting, that were collapsing, and that caused confusion inside of, hey, we got 2 more patients out in the parking lot. Like, wait a second, did we miss them? Well, no, there were just people walking up to the entrance, and unfortunately, they saw the condition of some of the people that we were bringing out, and they were collapsing from the side of that. Just kind of controlling that a little bit, I think, would help, and just kind of the things that you don't expect. You're going into a grocery store with 11 staffed people, and there's still people trying to shop. Weird to me, right? Well, they, the other half of the store didn't know what was going on. So everybody, runs outside with the customers in the back. They had no idea. So as you're going in, you're like, hey, you guys gotta get out of here, right? It's just, some of the things like that that you don't think about.
Right on. Yeah, Bill.
Similar situations, under sheriff, I don't know if they still do this or not, we would send a desk sergeant, and we had a desk sergeant over to dispatch to help them decipher what's going on. And it would be probably really beneficial if someone, either Howell or Brighton, depending on who's closer, sent command over there so they can understand what's going on, the structures and all that, because they don't.
Kind of work as a liaison between dispatch and.
Right. Right, so they can just turn, because we're getting all this information in, and they can turn and say, hey, do we need another 10 ambulances? Do we need? So, I mean, that was.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. From a law enforcement standpoint, and we can expect you guys are gonna be going to work and going and doing your thing in there for those initial contact teams, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I'm really curious about your communication challenges and whether you're on the 800 megahertz system, whether there is interop between private EMS, fire, and law, and if you do go to those EMER channels or event channels to come together on a frequent basis, or is this something that was a huge challenge in communicating with one another?
So we do all have 800s.
Okay.
We have the capability to interact with each other. Law enforcement typically likes being on an encrypted channel. So we don't always get to patch with them when they want to do that. But really the holdup for us was not having the airtime available. There was just so many people checking in route and on scene and trying to figure out who's going where we eventually did switch over to what we call a 28 rescue channel. So now you're not getting dispatched on it, you're not checking in route or on scene, it's just a separate talk group that you can talk on 800, and we did patch law enforcement on that separate channel eventually. So that did work out.
And EMS too, are they on the 800 system? Or?
So yeah, they are. They're not the best at changing channels.
Right.
They don't really have familiarity with it. So they were still kind of talking on main when they were supposed to switch a channel and everything. And that did cause our incident command to have to carry 2 radios.
All dispatched out of one dispatch center?
Yep. And they only had 2 dispatchers on that day. They were running 1 truck. For sure. Yes, sir.
Again, on the communication, was there, and I apologize if I missed it, but was there a communication center that was set up out there where you had a representative from police, fire, EMS, face-to-face to help coordinate some of that?
So we did do eventually law enforcement face-to-face with fire. Typically we won't get an EMS representative, just with their staffing, especially on a weekend. Typically for us, you're gonna get 2 or 3 ambulances. They won't have like a road supervisor or nobody on for that. So they're kind of taking their direction from that fire command. But eventually they were able to link up face-to-face with law enforcement outside.
Just to get a clearer understanding, how many law were on scene and how many fire and EMS?
So EMS,
Initially. I know
yeah,
eventually
roughly,
probably a lot more came.
absolutely, a ton more came. I would say, so the fire department only sent 2 engines, a captain, myself, and the assistant chief. So not many. We would have more fire resources in an actual fire than we did the active assailant. Probably only 6 ambulances in total. I would say, at the beginning we had more MSP than local sheriffs. Probably, I would say 6 MSP in 4 sheriff's steps. which, I mean, it was crazy for me to see that much MSP inside that building when I made the entry with, cause I was expecting more county sheriff's steps. I think the weekend definitely threw off what our numbers would have been, at any other given day, but I don't know if MSP was riding double or not, but like I said, kudos to them, cause I was able to link up pretty quickly with them, to make the building, but our radio comms was really with, the sheriff's department, to kind of linking up with them.
Is MSP, dispatched out of the same dispatch center as well, or is it just sheriff?
Just sheriffs.
Okay.
Now, if they're in our county, they'll hop over, let us know that they're there,
Okay.
working, if that makes sense.
How long until you felt there was enough resources on scene for number of patients?
I would say until we had that primary search complete, and we recognized that there was 11 patients, and I knew, the severity of them, that we could double up in an ambulance, if that makes sense. And I mean, really, to do that secondary, I would have liked more people, just for the length that it took. I kept thinking we would forget somebody, or miss them, really, because you read these, after action reports, where people will literally hide themselves in the shelves, and barricade them in, and as you can tell from the bleeding, if somebody would have been missed, they would definitely have been, I think, fatality at that.
How long did that secondary search take? So the primary search, you hit those initial patients, and then clearing the rest of the building. From a time span, how long do you think that took?
I would say a good half hour, just because the amount of doors that were locked, that we had to get keys and enter. Obviously, any closed door that we were going in, we wanted law enforcement with us just in case. And then all the storage containers outside that we opened and made entry. And fitness rooms, like I said, the pharmacy took us a little bit. The gate was down, so we had to get somebody from pharmacy to open the gate and kind of make sure that all those areas were secure. The attack kind of happened in the pharmacy area. That's why we're really focusing on the pharmacy and the locked doors with the consult rooms and everything like that. But I'd say about probably a good half hour.
Did you have any injuries from any of your fire, law enforcement, or EMS? Any injuries as a result of just responding and treating patients?
No injuries, luckily enough. If anything, I would say the broken glass, unfortunately, we did have to kick one of the doors open. Would have been maybe one of the more things that could have injured somebody, but no, we didn't.
Question on the pharmacy, was it closed or did it get closed?
It got closed.
It got closed.
It got closed. So when the pharmacy bailed, kudos to them, they didn't bail without shutting the door to the narcs.
Yeah.
What's the outcome of the 11 patients?
So they all made it out of the hospital. Nobody died. A lot of them were treated locally. I believe Munson did ship 2 of them out to the U, but they all got discharged out of the hospital. And I can definitely say, if that delay of getting inside, I think it was any longer, they would have let out. And that's just having that good communication with law enforcement, and luckily enough, like I said, they had really good timing. They were able to make the building as a contact team to get that essential clear. And then as soon as they were done with that, they were throwing tourniquets on as fast as they could as well. So, really happy to say all 11 of them survived.
Is that all ground transport that you guys use? Today, none of them went out there?
None of them went out with air, nope, ground transport. Air would have been a good, I think if there would have been any more delay, at least to me, air would have had whole blood. So at least they would have had the blood products coming from an air ambulance. So it's something I would definitely consider.
It really caught my attention on the multiple tourniquets
Yep.
part. Looking back on it, I mean, just the severity of it or improper use,
So
location?
just the severity of it, that's one thing that really caught me by surprise. Prior to this incident, we sent a lot of our guys through a TECC class. And really, when it comes to leg injuries, it's common that one tourniquet won't be enough. So really just, teaching people that, a lot of, when I went through EMT and even paramedics, one tourniquet will solve it. It won't. That's, I guess, really common in leg injuries, 2 or 3 different tourniquets. They have them cranked down as they can. They just need it from the severity of the way the artery was severed, more than one.
Were those multiple injuries on one limb, or it took that many tourniquets with just one severe wound?
That many tourniquets with just one severe wound. Yeah, so you know, you might go in with 4 tourniquets, you think you can treat 4 people, when in reality, and like I said, they even taught us in TECC, when it comes to tourniquets, 1 is none, 2 is best.
And then you mentioned earlier when MSP got there, they had a MCI bags, like mass casualty incident bags with some medical supplies in there.
Absolutely.
Did you get the information? Is that commonly carried by them? Is it on every?
So I guess every
car?
trooper carries one.
Okay.
And it's a bag that it has tourniquets, it has dressings, bleeding controls, and like I said, it was our understanding from talking to them that every trooper carried one.
Okay.
I don't know how many quantities of like tourniquets, but I was surprised to see how many MCI bags that they brought in, because all of them brought one in. So that was something that we weren't expecting, and you know, we've trained active shooter before with them, but I guess you know, never really dove into the amount of supplies they carry.
Yeah, and that's great to know for us. We have a limited amount of supplies that we're bringing in with us. If they're going to be coming anyway, and they have that available, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
use it up for sure.
Yeah.
Plus is the sheriff's.
Yeah, we're loading out with tourniquets.
You're loading with it?
Sweet bags on their person in the car, so, yeah. MSP bags are pretty sweet, they're expensive, but they have their logo on them too.
They look really excited. They were sweet.
They are pretty sweet.
They're
That's
all
what they get 'em
labeled
back.
and everything's color coded for them. They're nice.
So that-
You gotta call Wayne before you can open it, but.
Was command transferred at all?
Command wasn't transferred at all. Luckily, our on-duty captain got there pretty quick, and he stayed in command for it. By the time we got there, the last patient at the hospital was 32 minutes, I believe. Which, like I said, it was pretty quick. Luckily for us, I mean, the stars aligned, right? All the patients were in a straight line. We were able to capture a couple ambulances from out of township that were leaving the hospital. So they were in the game to be played as well, quicker than we would have normally had them if we would have had a call for them.
The law enforcement officer that kind of diffused this, was he local?
So, you know, citizens actually kind of held the guy down in the parking lot, if you will.
I saw a video.
Yeah. So one of them was a CPL carrying, the other one kind of maybe charged him with a card or not. So the citizens actually had him pinned down in the parking lot.
But there wasn't a law enforcement officer?
No.
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No.
My man.
Yeah.
CPL, we got a card.
Yeah. And then they, again, you know, the stars played out, right? Because if that guy would have been in that building, it would have took that much longer. I mean, I have no doubt law enforcement would have made entry at the contact team, and he would have been taken into custody quick. But having him in the parking lot to already be in custody really before we got there
And that's still
allowed
alive
us
in
to
the
have
story.
that good conversation of, hey, are we comfortable that this was a lone assailant? Yes, he's in custody in the back of your car. Yes. Okay, let's go in pretty quick.
All right, you advised Sanders passing out, other ones shopping around you. Do you have anyone jumping in, like were they assisting?
There were a couple that wanted to, and it was just, you know, trying to get them outside as quick as we could, right? There was a couple off-duty nurses, right? They're always gonna. One of the Walmart people took their vest off and was trying to make that an improvised tourniquet. Kudos to them. But yeah, it's crazy, you know, to think of that.
The employee of the month pin just left a scar on a bicep instead.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, the vest that he used for the tourniquet still had his name tag on it. Yep.
Jason was
Like
there.
MSP, want it back.
Yeah.
So is there any thought to distributing the patient load?
For ambulances, for the amount of injuries that they had, we felt that, you know, tourniquet on the arm, the bleeding was stopped enough to make the short 5-minute trip to the hospital. If we would have had, you know, I think more ambulance there, we definitely would have did better patient load, you know, one patient to a paramedic. But I guess we were worried that we were gonna run out of ambulances before the extras got there.
Yeah, I'm at different destination facilities.
So Munson's the only one we got. The only other facility that we would have would be urgent cares. And the next, and you know, even for us, it's a Cadillac, which are kind of a Band-Aid stop. And then really you're going down to Grand Rapids.
Right.
So unfortunately for us, our hospital gets everybody. They can set up like a makeshift trauma intake in the parking lot that takes an hour. But yeah, you know, the only thing that I would have really recommended if we had, you know, maybe more
It's
severity.
just funny, right? Because we call a trauma patient, we're all worried about their what? Their golden hour?
Golden hour.
You need an hour just to set up for me? It's over.
That's it. Yeah, you got it. I think we could have flown one person out if we needed it, and we could have called a helicopter from Grand Rapids, but it's tough, and that's why our hospital was screaming at us of, we need a firm count of how many people you have
Right.
to call people in and prepare for this, when really it's gonna take a minute or two to get that good primary search completed to give them that number.
Do you think when you need X amount of ambulances, you should just start spinning up, because it does take them a little bit to get going?
It does, 100%. I think that initial MCI with 5 ambulances, at least for us, was a good thing. And like I said, if we needed 10 total, I think it would have been quicker to do a quick turnaround at the hospital and bring them back to the scene.
Oh, you said it was only 5 minutes,
Yeah,
okay.
and then load them up like that.
Gotcha.
Yep.
How good was your information coming out of dispatch initially?
Yeah, so that initial call came out as, like I said, one laceration, and then that quickly that dispatcher just recognized that, hey, this is an active assailant going on. I think in, you know, talking to him, he said going to an active assailant conference and starting to, you know, see some real life scenarios helped them. So dispatch knew, you know, one of the big important things was, what are they wearing? To try to narrow down if this is 1 or 2 people. Dispatch called the hospital for us and gave them a huge head start. And then dispatch again, you know, was using keywords that, hey, now you have an active assailant, active threat, things like that. So with being short-staffed, I think they did a great job. And especially, like I said, having that education and being prepared with some of the stuff that they can help out on.
See, put your
That
hand
was all private, you guys used all private EMS on that?
So our townships have private, the other townships kind of surrounding us are township-based EMS, so it was a mixture of both. And then Traverse City ended up sending an ambulance up there as well. So, yes, sir.
How long did it take you guys to initially realize that the guy was already taken down before you guys had like another guy?
So pretty much travel time from our station to Walmart, which was probably about 3 minutes. Seemed like a long time, but they had pretty good intel that this guy's in the parking lot. I think from the time, and don't quote me, I think a lot of I think it was like 1:20, law enforcement got there and had cuffs on him, which was pretty good. And you know, even for our guys, you know, just going through a lot of the research that the FBI will put out or somebody, right? You know, statistically, it's 1 assailant, and there's typically subdued pretty quickly from law enforcement. So, yes, sir.
Post-incident follow-up, CIS, anything with your agencies?
Yeah, so, you know, multiple after actions, a warm wash, hot wash. You know, one thing that our county did was bring in our CIS SM team, our SISM team. Peer support was brought in. We offered multiple days from them. We have a really good, we call it Northwest Peer Support Network up there that we were able to tap into and bring outside, you know, a counselor, a chaplain, things like that for some of the guys to talk to. Because it was a big concern. The guy on our first arriving engine was his second day. He had the 1 in career call on his second day. Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, right? So you gotta start, you know, thinking about now, how do I get this guy now to stay with me after he just witnessed? So that was a huge concern in our part, to make sure he's taken care of.
Also being proactive on that.
Any social media issues with your Scanner Moms group or anybody recreationally filming during the event?
Ton of videos from the event on social media, ton of posts on social media. I would say, you know, even looking at it from an agency standpoint, a lot of misinformation going out on social media. That's one thing, you know, I would definitely say from even a department, just with everything that was going on social media, something's got to get released, something's got to get released that night, just to kind of like hear the whatever you can, you know, give them without giving out too much of the confidential information. But we responded to this, you know, our thoughts and prayers go out to Walmart, you know, we responded, but, I mean, as they were there, it was crazy, and then our guys are getting back to the station, and their call is already on Fox News, CNN, all the national news that this is making. I think, you know, the governor's tweeting, there's things that going on, there's this call that you just went on before you even get back to the station, and it's already all over the news. So I think
Social
just,
media had the bystanders in the parking lot
Sure.
apprehending him
yep.
within an hour of the incident.
Crazy, I know. And I think just getting ahead of that, and creating that message that you want to release. You know, eventually all the acronyms from the federal agencies got there to assist our law enforcement, and then, you know, the hospital did a full news conference, press release, and things like that. But just on a, you know, fire department standpoint of, you know, make sure that message is clear, concise, and everybody's on the same page of what you're gonna release. It was something that was hitting national media attention, so it was something that couldn't wait until Monday morning
No pressure.
to get pushed out, if that makes sense.
So did your chief handle that lift, or did you guys designate a PIO, or?
Chief handled that lift,
Alright.
thankfully for us, yep.
How long did they close Walmart down for?
It was like a good 4 to 5 days.
What?
Yeah, they closed Walmart down. I was shocked as well.
No. Thought Christmas was it.
But yeah, they kept it down for, like you said, multiple days. It was definitely something, you know, going through this incident, like, you know, this thing's closed for a while, right? It's not something we're gonna clean up real quick and get the store open. It was a good 5 days.
Walmart had been losing their mind.
No, 4 to 5 days. Myers was really happy. Yeah.
Sorry for what happened, but come over here.
We got some live deals going on.
You were talking earlier, you said the one didn't put a head count at like 9 and it ended up being 11, which, thinking this through, I'm still thinking that was pretty dang good. Can you walk through that process of who controlled your patient count? Because I'm seeing you're talking about so many different groups going in. You know, we've got 2, they might see the same ones.
Yeah.
I can see that number getting inflated pretty easily.
Yeah, you know, luckily for us, we had a couple different things working for us. Outside of that entrance, we ended up, like I said, putting that command in that spot, and luckily enough, someone showed up off duty from a neighboring county that was a chief, and he was there to scribe. So he was able to scribe for them. Me inside with my chief were able to give him good counts of, hey, ambulance Alpha 11 is gonna take 2 people. Alpha 1's gonna take 3 people. And then he saw them, was able to see them walk out of the store, pass him to the rig and say, hey, you're taking 2 people, right? Yeah, we got 2 people. So he kind of had that redundant, you know, radio
So you
confirmed.
did have it funneled through into one and he validated.
Yeah, and you know, it worked out in a perfect world where they literally had to walk by him, so he was able to.
Did they have the other entrance closed, or it just happened to be that they were all
Just
like
happened to be that entrance.
Okay.
And I think you said situational awareness. If this was spread out, we would have lost some of that using a different entrance, not having that face-to-face situational awareness.
If you could go back with your crew to the night before, what would you guys train on the night before?
The night before, you know, for the guys on the ground, the crew, right, it's as simple as it is, stop the bleed. You know, we have one of those stop the bleed legs where you just practice, you know, wound packing. But even going over, hey, it might take, you know, 2 tourniquets and not 1. We train a lot on tourniquets, like I said. It's different when you start getting the junctional. You know, you think of neck, you think of face, you think of, you know, your core and your chest. That's really where those bandages, they were throwing, we call it halo seals, the vet occlusive dressing on everybody, right? So just making sure, you know, limbs are great. They're definitely high priority. We need to stop that bleeding. But maybe, you know, some of the bleeding in your core would be huge.
You said you weren't packing, you were doing more pressure.
More pressure in halo seals, yeah. There were a couple definitely spots on, where they needed pressure, but mainly it was, like I said, pressure inside of that.
And that contained it pretty well.
It did, absolutely. Definitely halo seal or those occlusive dressings in the front, but that did contain a lot of it pretty good. I think the knife ended up being, I wanna say 3.5 off the top of my head. Wasn't terribly long, but it was definitely enough to do a lot of damage, a ton of damage.
You said you had ballistic helmets and vests for the fire department. Did everyone that had those accessible to them, the fire service, take advantage of them?
No.
It was underutilized?
Nobody put on a vest or a helmet. Yeah, and it's crazy, we had a lot of it there for everybody. I guess just that conversation in the parking lot, that they thought that assailant was alone. Looking back on a safety standpoint, we put a ton of money into these vests and helmets. I don't think it would have hurt anybody to wear it, just in case somebody else was hiding in that store for a secondary attack. Yeah.
Alright, so, perfect world, you get to pre-plan this. How are you setting up your traffic flow and your communication and your command search?
Yeah, I think communication gets pulled automatically to a different channel that you dispatch and check on scene on, right? I think that clogs a lot of it. Perfect world, I think resource requests from fire and EMS come from fire and EMS. And like I said, looking at Walmart, definitely I think I would have took people in and out. Instead of, in and in. And definitely not taking off the entire parking lot. Maybe taping off the front door or the front section of the facility, but not taping off the entire parking lot so people could still get in and out. It was a mess, and especially think about that parking lot, all those people are now leaving, right? And that supermarket really only had one good way in and out. So I think, setting up extra resources if you have them at maybe some of those entrances to help direct, right? Because these ambulances, they're hearing on the radio maybe where they should go, but if I have someone at that entrance of, hey, just make sure you turn left up here and just stage up there and I'm gonna call you when they're ready. Everybody's on the same page now. Nobody's confused, right where that should go.
So you had the command right outside, then you would have thrown up a staging officer, and then you had an officer inside running that and communicating with command.
Yep. That was it. We never had the staging officer.
You would, but in the
I
perfect
would, in my
world,
perfect world, I would. Yeah, I would have probably had a staging officer, the command officer, and what we would call a triage officer inside. Yep.
Well, ours would be a little different too, cause ours aren't gonna go to the door. So they would need, LCA would need a hold zone established.
Spencer, real quick, I apologize if I missed it. What was your guys' primary method of moving patients out of Walmart and out to the rigs?
Yeah, so we did, I believe, a couple people in the mega movers. Most of it were they brought cots inside.
Okay.
We never established that casualty collection point. But we did bring our backpacks have true mega movers in them that we could have dragged them, but we were able to just bring those cots inside and put them on that and take them out.
All your patients were injured inside the Walmart?
Yep. I think one just at that kind of entrance exit area, but everybody else was inside.
So that's maybe something stealing all the cots, getting them moving forward, that is the easier way to take them. If you got the manpower.
And I think even looking back to those patients, we have a lot of young people there. I think just having the understanding of, if those patients were deceased, do you move them? They're evidence, right? You leave them. I think a lot of our new people wouldn't have done that. And just, yeah, they would try to bring them out, because you want to help anybody, right? So the first person you come on, you want to get them outside to treatment, but in reality, if they were deceased, you're going to leave them. I think just having that knowledge, no matter how many times I can tell you it now, I always tell my guys at 3 in the morning under high stress, right? The simple stuff doesn't get so simple anymore. It's that muscle memory, and the more we can train on it, the more you'll remember it, hopefully, under those high stress environments.
Brian, are the cots universal? So let's say I pull a cot out of 103 and I happen to have 918 first in line. Can I put that cot in that other rig?
Unless
it's
they're
in the
both,
line?
unless those units are both equipped with auto load. If they're equipped with auto load, they should auto load into that unit.
The auto loaders are different. Yeah. They don't have all the same auto loaders.
Because they have a different model.
Oh, that would suck, cause now you got an ambulance that could technically be blocked in and you, now you gotta move a patient to a cot. Yeah, okay, that's.
Why would you buy all the same ones?
Yeah, I'll tell you, even in real life, when we have to call a different ambulance because the power load breaks, you gotta take everything off the cot, load them over, it's a pain in the butt.
Anybody have anything else for Spencer? I know you got an early morning tomorrow.
All good. Well, thank you guys so much for having me tonight. If any questions come up, definitely reach out to Todd or Chief, and I'd be happy to help you guys with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.